surgeries, it follows as a human right once you let expressive individualism in the door. Okay? The train has left the station. And so I don't want to be overly downer, but I think we really need to wrestle with this, and this is the attitude of our kids. This is how they've been raised. This is America. Okay? Even the ones who've been raised in strong Christian homes. So let me give a couple of stories to flesh all this out. I was telling Ron this earlier. You see this most often, or in the strongest terms, when it comes to gender ideology. The kids, at least the ones that I teach, they really, really, really go all in on this because it's tied to their peer acceptance to a great degree. This week, in my philosophy class, the preferred pronouns discussion came up, and I just kind of first sat back a little bit and listened to them talk, just kind of see how they'd react. And the discussion lasted about 3 minutes because they're like, we all agree. What is there to talk about? Of course it's respectful. We don't even need to debate this. Like, and they're like, oh yeah, okay. End of discussion, right? And then I started asking questions, and their heads exploded, you know? The one student who defended the preferred pronouns idea most staunchly is a Christian student who goes to a very conservative evangelical church. If I said the church, you would all be pretty surprised. And she was the staunchest defender. And I've actually spoken to that church, and she was there in the group that I spoke to. Okay, and here she is, defending, you know, just you know, so dogmatic about it, right? And the whole class, it was those other two students that I mentioned earlier. They're the only ones that kind of sort of balked at it. And the one girl kind of did it quietly, and then the Muslim kid, he's solid, man. I love that kid to death. He is not afraid at all to be that lone voice, and he does a really good job of being the one guy, you know. So other than that, pretty much everybody else was pretty comfortable with, you know, that whole worldview, right? Another story that demonstrates this is last year, this is my English class, we had read a novel, and the district curriculum called for the students to make a fictitious town. They had to do a presentation on it, you know, Google Slides and all that. And the town had to have you know, central values and a driving philosophy and a mission and all that. So every single student, without exception, had you know, you get to be who you are as a central value in the town. So maybe it was articulated a little differently from student to student, but it was all there. So this one girl gets up there, and she says verbatim, you can express who you are. In my town, we value diversity. It's okay to be different. You be you. So I started asking some questions. So I said, who's the poster child in your town? Who's your exemplar? So she thought for a little bit. She said, Willow and Jaden Smith, because of their edgy lifestyles have been rejected by the black community. So I was like, you know, I think I can understand what you mean by edgy, but what do you mean by edgy? You know, of course, it's their sexual permissive ethic, right? LGBT and all that. I even think Willow was polyamorous, according to the student, right? So I asked her, you know, where's your limiting principle? Are there any limits to that? She said, I have none. I'm like, all right, is there anybody that you would ever kick out of your town? No. So I'm like, in my head, I really don't think you believe this. So what about Trump? Immediate negative. Of course, she's like, oh hell no, you know, Trump's got to go, right? So the point here isn't to defend Trump. I'm not a supporter. The point is that, you know, she never thought about that. She just popped the bubble real quick, right? Now, that wasn't the most. Hold on, I'm not done yet. That wasn't the most eye-opening part. Okay, I continued and I asked her, what if you found like solid scientific evidence that the polyamorous lifestyle is unhealthy for emotions and relationships and all that? Would that change your acceptance and celebration of that lifestyle? And she said, no. Why? Because you can't oppose a person's choice. It's all about choice. So like, okay, is there anything that could cause you to rethink and change your mind? Again, no, for the same reasons. All about choice. She's like just really dogmatic about it. Okay. It's like, well, you know, where would you draw the line? She's like, okay, I would limit it if it's weird. what makes something weird? She said, well, if it's bad, it's weird. Okay. What makes something bad? Well, if it's weird. Okay, well, we're going in a circle. Help me out here. And about all she could say in the end was, I would limit it if somebody's doing something that makes somebody else uncomfortable. And I'm like, okay, where could that go? You know, that's about as deep as she could go, right? And that's representative. Again, that's not atypical. That's pretty standard in my classrooms, all right? Now, how does this mix with the conformism part? All right, it's real simple. They hear this individualistic message over and over and over again. And it's not countered effectively from the culture, especially from the culture, because that's where they're getting it from. And it's not countered effectively in their churches and in their homes. And so it just wins by default. They conform to it. Okay, it's like, why do all the nonconformists dress alike? It's that sort of thing. And you can even see this in the story that I just told. Every single student was very dogmatic about the individualism. They repeated it on cue, like 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. It was almost the exact same vibe, you know? And when I asked them questions and gave them pushback, I just got these blank stares, you know? When I'm talking one-on-one with students and I'm asking them how they're doing, you know, the phrase that I get most often is, I'm tired. If you want to go into detail about that, I think that has to do with the pandemic and how we've reacted to it, so we can talk about that. But when I'm in classroom scenarios and we're talking about stuff like this, the phrase that I hear the most, by far, not even close, is the phrase, I agree. They don't agree with me, because I'm the ogre that's like asking them questions. They agree with each other really quickly. And that's because they do not want to be perceived as judgmental. They are willing to go to great lengths to avoid that stigma. So there's a lot of kabuki theater going on. There's a lot of going along to get along because they don't want the mob to come after them. Okay? So that's the first thing.